Today I'm going to tie this very beautiful pattern, Ferguson's Minnow. Its originator, Bruce Ferguson, was a founder of the Sea Run Coalition in Washington, and he essentially became the spokesman for the cutthroat trout in front of the legislature. And through his work and the work of his colleagues, the state eventually changed the fishing regulations to protect the fish. So I wanted to tie one of his signature patterns. And all I really have to go on is this tiny little photo along with the recipe, which is in Les Johnson's 1979 book on sea runs, which I have a copy of. But I think that's probably enough for me to have a stab at it. I'm going to tie this on a classic streamer hook, the NS118 from RX, which is a very high quality hook. But any 4X long hook should suffice, provided it's got that down eye. So I'll get one in the vise. I'm going to be using a flat thread, UTC 70 in black, and I'll establish a base of about 10 wraps right behind the eye, maybe 2 eyes width out there. I'll cut off the excess thread, and the mylar tinsel body is going to require reinforcement, so I'm going to tie in a rib of medium oval tinsel. I'll tie that on my side, and then as I'm wrapping it, I'm going to turn it so that I end up wrapping it along the underside of the hook shank. Then every now and again I'll stop and flatten my thread by spinning it counterclockwise. I'm going to stop when I get to a point approximately opposite the barb of the hook, which of course I will cut off before fishing this fly. There we go. And then for now I'm going to clip the tinsel out of the way. And the recipe specifies a tail of fire red wool as bright as possible. In that little photograph you can see a big bump at the end of the tail end, because I think the wool was just tied in for a short length. I hate that, so to avoid it and make the fly as smooth as possible, I'm going to try and tie it in along the full length of the body. This yarn's probably 5 or 7 ply, and I think it's got some acrylic in it. So I happen to be one of those guys who knits. I make socks and gloves and hats and so on. So I had this yarn in my wool collection, but you should be able to pick up something like this at any old yarn shop, and it's good to have some wool in red and yellow and orange in your fly tying supplies. It's a very versatile material. Just tie that down. Now I'm going to tidy up the end as best as I can, and the object here is just to get the body as uniform as possible before applying the tinsel. Okay, that doesn't look too shabby. For the body, I'm just going to use the commonplace mylar tinsel with a silver and a gold side. I'm going to cut a piece at a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to tie it in with the silver side away from me. And you just need to trap that little point against the hook and then wrap it down really tightly. And as you fold it, it's going to expose automatically the silver side and establish the angle that you're going to be wrapping it on. Like that. I'm just going to flatten that bit with my nail. Now we're going to wrap this on in non-overlapping turns, keeping the tension as tight as possible. And don't obsess with getting the perfect coverage at this point, as the second wrap in the opposite direction is going to look better, I promise. So when you reach the tail, just simply reverse direction and start wrapping back towards the eye of the hook. Up to there. So when you get to there, just reverse your thread back and make 4 or 5 tight wraps of thread to trap the mylar. Make some turns in front as well. And cut away the excess, push it down, and then tie that little nub of mylar in. Okay, now take the oval tinsel and wrap that in the opposite direction, keeping the same angle as you go. And if you do this right, it just will draw the eye away like magic from any imperfections that you have. Okay, see how awesome that looks? Now I'm going to secure that rib tightly with several turns of thread, front and back. Cut that off close, and then tidy up the tag end. Just wrap it in. Now to make the underwing, I'm going to use a mallard flank feather. I'm going to even up the tips of maybe 15 fibers. I'll have to cut those away. Now I'll just trim the ends square. Offer those up to the hook. And your first wrap shouldn't be too tight so as not to force the wing down too tightly against the body. And you tighten those wraps as you go forward, like so. I'll just clip off some of those ends. I'm going to take a peacock sword feather and select some of the strands that are towards the tip. I'm looking to take about 8 strands. I'll just clip those away from the stem, and you'll find that they have a natural curvature, and you just want to gently persuade them to lie in the same direction just by stroking them. That's about as good as I'm going to get. Now I'll tie these right on top of the mallard fibers. That's about right. And then I'll just clean up some of those excess butt ends, like so. Now for the hackle, I've chosen a wide, webby, barred grizzly hackle. I'm going to expose about 1/2 inch there of the tip by stroking back the rest of the fibers. I'll chop that off, then trim the fibers from each side, just to make myself a segment that I can tie in. I'm going to secure that on my side. Just gently pull as I go, make lots of turns. And I'll wet my fingers and stroke those fibers backwards. And I'm going to make about 3 or 4 turns, one in front of the other, keeping the fiber stroked back as I turn the feather around the shank. And now I'm going to trap that stem, make several turns over it, and then cut off the surplus end. And I've got a few fibers that I don't want here, so I'm going to just carefully remove them. There you go. Now I'm going to just build up a neat head with the tying thread. That will do. And then I'm going to put in a whip finish. And cut the thread. Then I'll trim that tail to the length of the wing, which is just beyond the hook bend. And now I can finish the head. I'm using a UV epoxy resin, but you could use varnish or head cement or just whatever you like. Cure that. I'll add a little bit more epoxy to the underside as well. And that completes the Ferguson's Minnow. I'm going to put a few of these into my fly box, and I'm going to try them out over the next few weeks. And they're reportedly excellent for saltwater estuaries as well as rivers. If you fish one, let me know how you did. Thanks for watching, good luck, and take care.